the purpose of this session is to give you a little bit of an insight into how the Energy Law Institute operates, what you can expect from your LLM, not just in terms of the academic experience, though that's very important, but also about the extensive extracurricular activity we aim to provide, which really, I think, enriches your experience. And in so doing, I hope what we'll convey to you is why we think what we have to offer is really unique and importantly places our students in the strongest position to be able to take up a career in the sector. And that in these COVID-19 pandemic period is going to be more important than ever. But it is also, as Petrova said, an opportunity for you to ask any questions of us that you may have. So I'm going to start with highlighting what I think makes us special. And I'll just touch on three things which we'll elaborate on. The first is the breadth and scope and focus of our teaching, which Norah began to touch on then, and she will talk about that. Secondly, it's taking advantage of our London location. We enjoy special access to and support from many of the leading legal practitioners in the sector. London is an important centre, we'll come back to that. And thirdly, we attract a truly international student base, and that's very significant. And again, we'll explain a little bit more about that. But we'll touch on each one in turn. So perhaps, Norah, you could say a little bit about our curriculum, how it's arisen, and what teaching they can expect.
Sorry, I was just answering a question, quite an important question on the website, which, as James will recall, we have spent quite a significant amount of time upgrading and updating. It just now has to be made live. So we're still, unfortunately, working on the old one. So that should keep watching. I think within the week we should have the green light to go ahead with the new one. Well, what I would say is, we're very new, relatively new in the grand scheme of things. I was at an earlier event for the 40th anniversary of CCLS with the School of International Arbitration, which is 35 years old. We're only in our 5th year. So it's me and James and Tibi Samurgandi, who you'll meet towards the end of the session. Maria Taylor, who runs a forum, which kind of is, I suppose, a think tank for leaders in the field to discuss developments and future directions of the energy sector. And Marie also runs a New Voices for the students. And recently we actually had a very interesting session, which James was on also, talking about careers, potential careers in the energy market in these kind of uncertain times. And it was really interesting to get the views. We had in-house counsel from Total, we had a few partners from law firms who all had quite different perspectives, that although this is a great time health-wise, that potentially it actually gives rise to a huge amount more opportunities within the energy sector. So that was quite an opportunity. We have spent a significant amount of time looking at and refining and developing the modules that we offer over the last couple of years. And we actually created a curriculum advisory committee made up of practitioners and in-house counsel in the industry sector. And we asked them questions like, what do you want future energy lawyers to know about the energy sector? And that's one of the reasons why we have the module on energy and ethics, because actually all of them agreed that if you don't understand whether they be hard law or soft law principles that apply when you're doing an energy project, whether in your home jurisdiction or abroad, that would be a very serious gap. So for example, James talks about the implications of the extraterritorial effect of the UK Slavery Act in that module, which is run by Dr. Morgandi. We also have very practical and contract heavy, I suppose, modules. In the energy law principles, we introduced the main kind of granting instruments, if you will, in the upstream sector. And that used to actually be all one module of principles and energy transactions. So we look at all of the different types of contractual provisions in joint operating agreements, all of the upstream contracts, offshore construction contracts for wind farms, so the EPC contracts, the financial documents that are used to secure project finance for these long, large-term energy projects. We have a module which is just for the first time we're run this year on energy and climate change. And actually that was quite an interesting module because, again, it's future looking. James and I co-taught it, and we looked at some interesting things like green bonds, green financing, sustainable financing, climate change litigation, renewables arbitration. So there's a kind of a wide range of issues covered in that module. And of course, then James did a case study on the UK Climate Change Act, which is probably one of the first in the world to set a kind of a zero net target, very ambitious target by 2050, but has been relied on by other countries as a model to be used in their own home jurisdiction legislation. So that's quite a good case study. And we don't choose UK just because we're based in London. Actually, it's just because it was the first one that was introduced and was quite ambitious on that. And obviously, then we look at the international treaties in that module as well. So you'll heard probably a lot about the Paris Agreement, but before that there was the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol. So there's been a kind of a string of international treaties in relation to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to prevent the increase in temperature, becoming more and more and more, I suppose, increasingly onerous and binding on states. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens as a result of this current COVID pandemic as to whether or not that will accelerate the energy transition. And that term, I'm using it consistently on purpose because the energy transition theme runs through all our modules, I think by necessity, and James may want to say more about that. But, on decommissioning, which again is coming up as a big issue, again taught by Dr. Morgandi, the whole, and the renewables, the energy transition is that move away from heavy reliance on non-renewable fossil fuels. So oil, coal, gas, but we have to use that terminology because the market is moving. And James will have seen it more in his nearly 40 years experience, more movement than me in my only 20, however many years experience of that shift. And there has become, I think there's an increased urgency in the language within the last couple of years with the IPCC report on 1.5%. So all of the modules are, again, quite practical. They're designed around that energy transition movement, even including Carlos Bellerin's module on oil and gas and petroleum contracts. Carlos is a Venezuelan lawyer who has worked for Venezuela. He worked in Freshfields, and he now works at a consultancy, energy consultancy firm, IHS. So he brings quite a lot of practical experience, but looking at that movement and how, again, they're impacting on the bid rounds and the type of contracts and provisions that you're seeing in those contracts. And then, of course, just to mention Silke Goldberg, who's a friend and former colleague at Herbert Smith Freehills. She's a partner in the energy regulation sector. In fact, she is a walking encyclopedia on all things regulation, not just EU, but globally, because she advises clients all over the world. And she writes and updates every year the book on EU regulation. 28 states, soon to be 27, but we won't hold that against them right now. So she teaches on the regulation modules. We did have last year, it was interesting for us because the college changed from 22.5 credit modules to either 15 or 30. So we're still, I would say, in the process of figuring out which modules work best within those credit allowance. And I think that we'll probably see further development. Some of them will move back to 30, and some of them may actually move from 30 down to 15. So there is still some redesigning that we will be doing within that program. Obviously the modules are there, and hopefully there'll be hyperlinks to all of them in a week. Just one of the things that we try and do, as well as teaching all of the law, the laws in relation to renewables, climate change, granting instruments, we try and provide students with extra curricular activities. So one of the good examples is we have a Friday lecture series, and we've been really lucky to have excellent speakers. So we had the General Counsel from BP, who happened to be talking to Barack Obama the week before he came and talked to our students in London, so that was very nice. We have 2 of those each semester, and we try and get different voices. So we've had NGOs, we have Greenpeace, we've had government representatives, private sector, so a real range, European Commission, so regional, in those Friday lecture series. And it's a good opportunity for the students to be able to ask questions. The format is a 30-minute lecture followed by Q&A for about 20-25 minutes. And in fact, very kindly, the most recent Friday lecture was the General Counsel of BP, who actually asked if he could have lunch with the students afterwards. So we facilitated that in the room, and they had a lot of questions about careers and career path. And in fact, he's originally from a small town, Kansas. So other things that we're working on, and in fact, it's in my mind because this year, the BP roundtable, we have 2 lawyers who come in and give examples of areas they've had to work on, in particular in the last year. So it could be a stabilization provision. Last year it was on human rights and sustainability, some issues of slavery in certain jurisdictions. And this year that will be held online on the 29th of June. Again, just to see, kind of get as much participation as we can. And one of the other events we run is the annual Clifford Chance sponsored energy lecture. And we've had 5 now. So we have started with Lord Brown and Sir Richard King, Lord Lamont. I'm going to struggle. Sir Richard Friend, Cavendish Professor from Cambridge, and the ex-president. Beg your pardon?
Claire O'Neill.
Claire O'Neill, yes. I knew she was ex-president of COP26, so she was unceremoniously booted out, if you will, by Boris. So we've had quite a high caliber range of lectures there. It's run and hosted by Clifford Chance down in Canary Wharf. And we really we usually get about 200, if not more, attendees, and all students are welcome to attend, in fact encouraged to attend, because it's a great way to meet other lawyers, partners, participants in the energy sector. And I think that's one of the advantages of us being located there in London, and both of us having worked in corporate law firms located in the city. So I think I would hand back to James at that point.
Well, actually, I mean, not that we rehearsed it heavily, but that's a sort of perfect segue back to the discussion we had earlier. The second thing I mentioned was the support we received from law firms and law professionals in London. And being in London is a massive advantage. It's home to all the top international law firms, all the big accountancy firms are here, major consultancies and energy companies. It has a world-renowned bar, as well as being home to all the major banks and financial institutions. And so I think a lot of what Norah was talking about, the access to people like Carlos Bellerin, Silke Goldberg, all the Friday guest lecturers and so on, we've got them because they're based in London. We're able to keep a dialogue going with them. And we have, through the strength of the CCLS, the centre's reputation and our own strong contacts and network, forged really strong bonds with many of the top law professionals. We've created, and again, you'll see this on the revised website as and when it's launched. I suggest you look at the end of the week. I hope it'll be up and running by then. We've created our own membership scheme with some of the leading law firms and specialist barristers' chambers. And to give you a flavour, well, Clifford Chance are members, and you've just heard from Norah. They also sponsor our annual lecture, which is incredibly well attended and always attracts very good speakers. Norton Rose Fulbright are members. They have provided scholarships since we began. Freshfields, another one of the leading law firms in the world, provide a projects workshop every year, and Denton's frequently host evening events and lectures. There are lots of other members as well, but you'll see about them on our website. And the membership scheme allows our member firms and chambers to share in some of the benefits of the LLM which our students enjoy. So they're invited to participate in the Energy Fundamentals course, which we run for all of our students at the beginning of each year, academic year. It's a 3-day course with an overview of the sector, and they can send their lawyers to that. They attend the Friday guest lecture series, which Norah was talking about in the annual lecture. But the relationship is two-way, it's very symbiotic. And they and our other key supporters like BP, Shell, the Energy Charter Secretariat offer our students other benefits such as mentoring. There's a mentoring scheme within CCLS, and a lot of our students participate in that, which gives them one-to-one mentoring with leading professionals in London. We have an internship program which enables our students to go for anything from 1 week to 3 months on an internship to either law firms or to people like the Energy Charter Secretariat or the EBRD. So it's a key feature of the LLM, and taking advantage of our location in London, we want our students to have exposure to the top legal brains and professionals in the sector. It's an opportunity to meet them, to be taught by them, to be mentored by them, and hopefully, in some cases, to work for them. Finally, I mentioned geographic diversity of our student body. In our 5-year existence, we have had students from over 60 different countries, and that brings a wealth of experience and different views to the table, and it enlivens the debates that take place in lectures and throughout the academic year. The other benefit, I think, long-term, is that it will create a wonderful network as students, the diaspora students returning home to take up posts in private practice, academia, in government, whatever form it may take. There is this network of alumni who will be able to tap into and gain experience from. So, as I said at the beginning, we think that it prepares our students for a future in the sector, and that's very important to us. And Norah, I don't know if you'd like to mention where some of our students have ended up, to give a flavour of the opportunities that are created, I think, very much in large measure by the LLM.
Yeah, I was just answering some questions in the Q&A there. In particular, was about the scholarship. We've been incredibly lucky that Norton Rose Fulbright offered scholarship for the last 5 years. They will be offering another one this year, and then it's up for review. And we do our best to continue with the support. And Clifford Chance have confirmed that they will continue to host the annual lecture, as an example, for another few years. But we really don't know what the internal discussions will be, so we can't sit here and say absolutely we can guarantee that that will be offered for the next year or two. We definitely know, obviously it's been offered this year. I think the time has now lapsed. So on Alumni, it's not as big, I suppose, an alumni yet as the School of International Arbitration, which I know since 2002, but we have a growing and active, I would say, alumni, and with students, I think, ending up in various locations and job roles. And that's actually one of the things that I say to students. I ask them, who wants to be arbitrator, and people put up their hand, or who wants to work for the government, and I always put up my hand. I've only ever managed to actually give advisory work for government. No government has actually yet currently employed me as an employee, but there's so many different possibilities. So we have some students who've gone back and worked for their home government in the energy sector. So Baghdad, who actually will be online later, I posted details of the CCLS, as it happens, is 40 years this year, and they're having a range of short conferences to celebrate that. And one of our students who's working for the government of Kazakhstan in the energy sector will be on that. We have a student who went off to Peru, is working for an NGO. We have one of the first year alumni is working in Sempre in Italy. A few years ago, Fernando Lutz, he worked for White & Case for several years in London. Then he went back to Brazil and in fact just decided that he was going to leave because he wanted to follow his girlfriend to Denmark. So obviously personal reasons can interfere with your long-term career plans too. So he's currently in Denmark looking for gainful employment. We have some former Mexican students who went back to work with Pemex. So in fairness, they were partly funded by the Mexican government, partly funded by Pemex to come and do the year LLM to gain kind of a wider experience. So not just upstream, they want to know about renewables and the energy transition and climate change and what kind of regulation is going on in other regions across the world. We have an Indian student who also I think will be appearing this afternoon, Ishita Pantu. We have arranged and we have an MOU with the Energy Charter Secretariat based in Brussels. And every year they offer 1 or 2 internships there. And we sent her application and she was successful. And in fact, they've kept her on. So she's still working on projects in the ECT and enjoying it greatly in Brussels. I think James may have mentioned the EBRD. They do also offer internships, which is great. They usually come with their own requirements, so they may have a language requirement, and it changes year on year depending on what exactly the projects are that they're working on at the time. So they may be looking for somebody with renewables experience. So that very much varies. So you can see from the student outline there that a lot of the students end up working either for a government. Some of them, actually last year, one student ended up doing an internship in Chevron, so they extended her period there.
Rosemary's at the US.
Yeah, that's right. We have a US student who is based in Texas, but now is working with the FERC. Yeah, we have, I forgot about Vivian Marangoni. She was a former LLM student 3 years ago. Was working for the government in Ofgem in the UK. I think now she's gone to work actually for Bays. Is that right? I think she's actually moved into the department. So NGOs, and having worked for NGO, I can definitely say that's non-governmental organizations. Some interesting work, maybe not as well paid as working for a law firm or in-house counsel or a government, but definitely it's quite a wide remit. So international governmental organizations, as well as NGOs, they've gone to work for. So quite a.
It's where Norah's heart really is, I think.
Absolutely.
But it's a very good cross section, and we're very proud of that. And as I say, it's terribly important that the LLM has not only academic value, but will also have practical value in positioning people for their futures. So that's a brief summary. Despite being only 5 years old, nearly 6, we're ranked in the top 10 law schools for energy in the world, and we're very proud of that. And I hope in some measure what we've explained today it gives you an understanding of why that might be. And before I hand over to everybody for Q&As, I'd like to introduce Tibi Samurgandi, who is our most recent recruit, a lecturer, and Tibi, we're delighted that she joined us. It was a great decision of ours and I think of hers, I'd like to say. So Tibi, perhaps you'd like to sort of say a few words about the ELI and your time there.
Yes, very quickly. Very nice to meet you all. My name is Dr. Tibi Samurgandi, and I am a public international lawyer. I completed my PhD in 2016 at the Graduate Institute in Geneva, and I have, after that, held a postdoc at the University of Cambridge. And as James was saying, I joined the Energy Law Institute 2 years ago. And my time at Queen Mary and at the Energy Law Institute has been fantastic so far. And this is not only just because it's a very interesting program focused on energy law, which is also my area of expertise, but it's also because of the students that I had the opportunity to teach to. And perhaps the best way to give you an idea of what you will be doing with me if you join the program is just give you a flavor very quickly of the 3 modules that I teach. So I'm going to start in October with a module on exploitation of energy resources in disputed areas. I decided to introduce this model because when you look carefully, you see the most conflicts around the world are somehow related to natural resources, and more specifically energy resources. So oil and gas, as well as water courses that are used for hydropower purposes. So I decided to add this module to the curriculum. And so I will start teaching that in October. And as of this year, I will run also a moot court competition, which will be part of the assessment. So even if we don't know what will happen, but even if some of you or all of you will be joining us online only, we will run this moot court, and this will be a way to keep you very involved. I will be acting as the judge. You will be counsel, either representing a party or the other. And this experience has really been enjoyed by students. So as of this year, will be part of the assessment. So it's something that you might find interesting. And I don't think many other law schools that offer energy law programs offer. The second module that I will start teaching in January is the module on decommissioning. So it looks at the back end of the energy life cycle. So looking at the decommissioning of oil and gas platforms, the decommissioning of nuclear power plants, also how we deal with solar waste, with radioactive waste. And I always have specialist experts coming in and offering 1 or 2 lectures within the course, precisely because of what James and Norah were saying. We're so lucky to have so many experts that can actually come and teach within the course. And then the last module is a module that was added a few years ago to the curriculum, which is the module on international energy law and ethics. And is perhaps the module that I teach, which gives you the biggest breadth of scope, because you will look at all the ethical issues that arise in connection with energy activities from a human rights law point of view, from an investment law point of view, trade law point of view, climate change law point of view. So it's quite an interesting module, and perhaps the one that the student find the most, the one that they don't think to take, but then at the end of it, they realize how much they learned, precisely because there are so many ethical issues that arise right now in connection with energy activities. And, think of Greta, who is making us aware of the fact that we really need to stop emitting and change, our lifestyle. And we often mention Greta in the course, and by the end of it, we realize how much we can do as, single people. So this is pretty much what I offer. And what I want to say is, when I was in your position a few years ago, and I did my LLM at Harvard, and I had to pick, what law school would offer me the best breadth of scope, as well as the best network, the best contacts. At that time, I was not focusing yet on energy law. But if I had today to pick a program that would offer me all these things, definitely ours will be one that I will keep, very high on the list, precisely because of the things we offer. And I say this having seen, how students have not just enjoyed the time with us, but were able to build upon all the things they learned with us in their careers afterwards. And as James and Norah were saying, we have this beautiful network of alumni. And I think if you would like, also to get in touch with some of them. I think maybe also from your home countries, that would be a way to also know, what people in your position thought a few years before when they joined us. And I think this is just, to say, I think we offer something really special. So I look forward to welcoming all of you next year. Thank you.
Tibi, thank you very much indeed for that. And I think we should now start answering some of the questions that have been posted, all of them if we can.
James, I think Prof was going to read them out, and then we'll...
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fine. Either way will work. Just so that we can try to address as many of the questions, because it's one of the key reasons for the session. And then if there is anything particular about your personal case, this is to the attendees, then maybe you should private message us rather than put it on the public forum. But for general questions, we're more than happy to address publicly. So we got a question from somebody that's working in Japan is working in a Japan EPC company now, wants to know a little bit more detail about the international construction contracts and dispute resolution course. So Norah, are you able to, or James, talk about that briefly?
Norah, be great. Yeah, why don't you on?
Yeah, so this is generally every year quite at the front end, so the negotiation slide looks at all of the fitted contracts, so the various different colours, red book, silver book, and all of the updated iterations of that. It's jointly taught by Professor Stavros Brekkalakis and David Brimore Thomas QC, who is a practicing barrister. In fact, mostly he does arbitrations, and he was a former colleague of mine in Herbert Smith Freehill in the dispute resolution department. So they look at all the contractual provisions and how they work in the first part of that module, but the back end of the module focuses entirely on the type of disputes that can arise and have arisen under the construction contracts and how they are managed. So it's quite a detailed, interesting module. I have heard students say it can be challenging, but I think challenging is actually a positive because it does cover such a wide range. So it is quite a popular module, and there's usually, I think, well over 50 students each year in that class.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Someone has asked, how many students do we have on this course every year? So I know it varies from year to year, but...
Yeah, actually, I'll take that and then I'll leave it over to James, because I want to pick up on something Tibi said, which is absolutely correct. And I say to students every year, and in fact, our very first Norton Rose Fulbright scholar, Lauren Downs, who had 16 years experience in the energy procurement sector, said she learned a huge amount from us, but actually it was the most interesting was the range of students and their geographic mix and the expectations they brought with them to the law and energy and how it should be managed by the home jurisdiction. So we have, in the beginning we started off, I think it was about 18 or 19 students. One year we had almost 50 students on the energy specialism itself, but on average I would say, James, it usually runs at around 30 on average who are taking the energy specialism. The module sizes will differ. As an example, the energy transaction module, not last year, but the year before, which ran for 4 years, as a 22.5 credit module, I used to always have about 50 students in the class. So we got students from general commercial, we got students from international business. A lot of the modules, so Tibi's and James' modules, will attract people from public international law as well as environmental law specialism. So you won't just be interacting in our modules with only energy specialism students, but a lot of our add-ons, so the mentoring and the internships, they actually are exclusively for energy students. And in fact, an example of that as well, I just posted yesterday a notification to say that there's a Lord Brown LLM dissertation prize. So Lord Brown Trust has put some funds aside, and they'll get a prize for the top 3 dissertations, and that's only for energy students. So no dispute resolution students or general commercial law students can avail of that. So whereas there's fluidity within the modules and they will vary in size, you will actually, it's quite nice, you'll meet a range of students from across other specialisms, which I think is just as important. But on average, I would say 30. James, I don't know whether you want to add anything onto that.
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think the first year was just over 20 actually, but it's been in that ballpark. What we don't know, obviously, is what impact COVID-19 will have on numbers, but actually in that range, 25 to sort of 45 is pretty comfortable. If it grew much more than that, I think it'd be difficult for us to give the kind of attention that we really want to. But as Norah says, there are lots of, because we have quite a wide range of different modules, there are always people from other disciplines, banking, commercial or environmental law and so on, who want to do one or more of our modules. So that is a very good sort of cross-fertilization. And maybe shall I pick up the next one as well?
Yes, please. Thank you, James.
Would it be possible to elaborate on the mentoring scheme offered to students? So we have, as we said before, a lot of support from the sort of professional community in London, and that's everything from judges through to partners and senior associates and corporate lawyers and so on. And CCLS has an overall scheme in which it seeks to pair up mentees, people who'd like to have the benefit of guidance from a mentor. And at the beginning of the calendar year, we put them together, and they spend, basically it's 1 hour a month is what is encouraged, in which they get together face-to-face if possible, and there's no particular format to it. So it can be giving advice, particularly to do with career path and so on. It might even be about, a student's dissertation, but it's also just an opportunity to forge a relationship with somebody in London, in the legal community, and to understand and to get the benefit of their guidance. So certainly all of my mentees I've kept in contact with one way or another, and I think it's been incredibly valuable. Energy tends to have a disproportionately high number. I think that's partly because we think it's a really, really good scheme.
Hi, sorry, James.
It's incredibly popular with the students as well. Sorry, Petrova. So that's a positive. Each year they all come back and they really enjoy meeting up with their mentee. In fact, a lot of them do stay in contact with them.
Yeah,
I was just going to add, sorry, this is Petrova again, just to highlight that students do have to apply for this program and there is limited capacity. Yes. But as James has said, there is a disproportionate high number of energy students. And I just think it's, this particular program have been very proactive and have a very willing bank of people that are offering this opportunity for energy students. But just so that you know that it's, just so you know.
We can't guarantee a place for absolutely everybody every year, but we have used and tried to, as best we can, increase the numbers. So we have quite a lot more mentorship people on our panel.
And there are other organisations and BP that joined it this year. EDF, I know, are very keen to be involved with it. But Petrova's quite right. It's we don't guarantee it in the same way we don't guarantee the internships. But in the last few years, we've been able to get something between 15 and 20 internships for our students. Not everybody wants them anyway, but so 2/3 of the student body will end up getting an internship in one form or another.
Petrova, I think we skipped a question there on the work for those working. How many days a week would we have lectures? Now, so it's probably a trickier question to answer because it would really depend on which modules you choose. There is also a college requirement that if you're studying full time, you can only work. I can't remember how many hours that is. There is a limit. Petrova, do you know how?
I think it's something.
Is it 20 hours?
Yeah, I mean the Tier 4 visa, when you come on the student visa, they will advise you on the number of hours, but it's around 21 hours maximum.
And I would say that we do have each year students who do continue to work. We have had some obviously part-time students. So somebody was working for Neil Miller. She's now a partner actually in Norton Rose Fulbright. She did it on a part-time basis. And we also have students who come do it on a full-time basis and continue to work. So this year, as an example, we have an Italian lawyer who's still working for his law firm. They're setting up a new office in London and he's studying full-time. So it is possible. I would say if you're obviously you can't work for more than the 20 designated hours anyway, but if you are trying to work full-time and study full-time, having done it in my youth when I thought I could do everything, at 21 I worked full-time in an investment bank and studied a 2-year program in a year. It isn't an easy prospect, so I would say maybe working part-time is maybe more realistic to be able to get, I suppose, the benefit as well out of your year study. It's the next question on the Norton Rose Scholarship, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So the Norton Rose Scholarship is essentially based on previous academics grades, financial need. There is an element. Neil Miller and myself sit down when we go through the short list. So it's obviously Norton Rose really want to encourage students that may not otherwise be able to have attended college in London to be able to do so. That's essentially what it's designed to do. But obviously they do look at results. So there is an academic requirement. So you're looking for some good results, financial need, and I would say honestly an interesting statement. You'd be surprised how many students seem to miss the significance of the statement. And in fact, if you write a quirky or standout or stellar or carefully crafted statement, that will actually get you on the short list and maybe as far as interview. And then once you're in interview, it's up to yourself to be able to get yourself the scholarship. So those three criteria are what each year for the last 5 years, Neil Miller and myself look at.
Great. Thank you very much, Norah. Shall I take the next one? You may want to add to it, but this is quite a long question about a career in the energy sector and for which there's no guarantee, pointing out that with the COVID crisis, oil and gas prices have collapsed to $20 per barrel with very limited demand, and companies are suffering at risk of insolvency, and thousands of workers in the sector have been laid off. And how will this affect the legal sector? And it's a very good point. I mean, I'd say two things. One, there's been enormous price volatility over the years. I can remember in the 90s when it went down to under $20. But this was a particularly acute event, and that was because not only did we have unprecedented collapse in demand, industrial demand, but you also had the Russians and Saudi Arabians fighting over the price. But long term, you're absolutely right. The oil and gas industry, which is part of the energy sector, is clearly facing some very significant challenges. Now, the gas side of it will have a much longer life, I think, than the oil side, because gas is seen by many as the fuel of transition, because it's less damaging to the environment in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So that side of it will continue, but also you're going to see enormous amounts of capital moving out of the traditional fossil fuels and into renewables. So our demand for energy is unlikely to go down. The developing countries are growing their economies very fast, and they want to take people out of poverty, and that will involve industrializing and the use of energy. So the sector, we had an event which I think Norah touched on the other day, talking about a future in the industry. And what the one theme that came through everybody was, it's going to be a period of very significant change, but certainly looking at the 40 years I've been involved with it, it's always been subject to change. But there will be a great need to be flexible. And that means being able to see how the wind is blowing, see what changes are taking place within the sector, and managing to, if you like, fashion your career to meet the changing needs of the energy sector. The energy sector is not going away, and it will always be a big employer.
Yeah, I entirely agree that the main message of that New Voices Forum, which I mentioned in my introduction, Wendy Miles was saying exactly that. We need to be inventive. And, if you think, the UK has had now more than 2 months where they have not produced any power because from coal. And I think there's going to be an inevitable shift. So it may well fast forward the transition. It may also, I think, Wendy Miles, a partner from Wilmer Hale, is right that technology will actually begin to play a huge part. So whereas, so there'll be, yes, with the wind, solar, hydro, but there'll also be more investment in things like storage. So the opportunities are going to move in a different direction. And I mean, this was a movement that was happening in any event. And now what international organizations and, you know, in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals are trying to do is to breach that energy trilemma. So have energy security, have sustainability, have affordability, so everybody will have access to it without relying on fossil fuels. And James is right. The International Energy Agency have identified gas kind of as the energy fuel of choice, or the energy transition fuel of choice. So there will be obviously a kind of a parallel, I suppose, development I see over the next couple of years. But there'll be a lot of opportunity for large-scale investments. And if you look at what the EBRD are doing, the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, there's a huge amount of funds that are coming and projects that are being approved, green projects that are being approved and are commencing, actually. So I think that will provide a lot of opportunity in the future. Great. Because the demand for power isn't going to go away. In fact, it's going to increase if everybody's going to be driving EVs or electric vehicles soon.
Maybe we'll all be staying at home. Thank you very much for that. The next question was just asking about involvement with chambers in the UK. Could you elaborate further on how the Energy Institute helps with opportunities for students aspiring for a career at the UK bar? Just on that, we don't specifically hold any recruitment seminars or conferences, but what I would say is we have good links with a number of chambers, very good links, as you will have seen, with 20 Essex Street and 39 Essex chambers, who are specialists in energy and infrastructure. And if somebody's interested in the bar, we would happily, and have done, set up for people to meet with senior barristers from those chambers to talk about life at the bar and the opportunities. And we would do that for any of our students who asked it, and they would be very happy to talk to them and help them in whatever way they can. What was the next one? The next one, I think, is it possible to do a trainee contract or an internship during the course period? Well, we've touched on our internship program. There are quite a number of internships offered which take place after students have completed their dissertation. So it's really from September onwards, and they're released from the academic year through till the end of the year. Some of them extend beyond that. Norah talked about EBRD and the Energy Charter Secretariat, who often offer 3-month internships, which they extend sometimes. Not everybody's guaranteed internships. Obviously, the law firms have a program of summer internships, but that is not available to our students because it cuts across the academic year.
Sorry guys to interrupt, only because we have about 7 minutes left. The next question is asking a bit about the global health crisis of COVID and how this will impact on the program, the different start dates. And is it possible I could invite Professor Noam to just give a very brief update on that, please? If Professor Noam can come online.
Yeah, he can. Just a minute.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if you've gone for a cup of tea.
No. So can you just let me put the camera on and get? Can you see me or?
Yes,
no?
we can. Yeah, we can see you.
You can. Good. Okay. So this is just to give you a brief explanation about the manner in which we intend to organize the first and the second semester. Is that what you have in mind, Petrova?
Yes, please. I think it'd be beneficial to all of our attendees.
I think there are two questions. There's in the context of the global health crisis, when will the program start? And then Damien has said for the period starting in September 2020, are all modules going to be taught online? And then there's another one about energy economics. Do you run modules on energy economics, which may be Norah?
That's different, though. Yeah, that's different. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and let me start with the caveat. I know very little about energy law. I'll just be explaining to you a little bit about our coming arrangement for the next academic year. So as I think one of the questions was alluding to, the first semester is likely to be run in the following manner. The lectures themselves would be delivered in an online format. The actual pedagogic structure of the online format is a little bit would be a little bit different. Again, there's going to be a number of options there, but it's likely that what you will have is not a 2.5, 3 hour lecture online. This is something that probably none of us can actually stand, no matter the quality of the actual lecture itself of herself. So you would have a shorter lecture with a lively, interactive class discussion to be followed. However, those of you who will be coming to London would also, or should also, benefit from a face-to-face educational session. So whether these would be seminars or tutorials or any other format that we seek to organize in that sense, that would be on top of any lecture that would be delivered, as I said, in an online fashion. When it comes to the second semester, I mean, none of us have a crystal ball. What we do have a hope to go in the second semester into a face-to-face lecture mode, COVID-19 allowing, of course. A worst-case scenario will continue according to the structure that I have just described in relation to the first semester. But as I said, we are very hopeful. So I like to use the term cautiously optimistic that we would be able to offer full-on physical lectures. In any event, first or second semester, as I said, we do strive, and the intention is to offer face-to-face, a face-to-face teaching experience, whether in the form of lectures or otherwise.
Petro, if I can very quickly answer the other outstanding questions.
Yeah, I think
I will be very quick. So the energy economics is not running this year. We were asked by college to streamline all of the specialisms, and unfortunately for this year only, energy economics will not be running. Energy transactions will be running. It is considered to be a kind of a core module. And on the module choices, Risk asked the question as to whether or not there's any basic or foundation courses. We have had discussions for many, many, many years on the various LLM programs as to whether or not a particular module should be made mandatory. And because you're postgraduate students, apparently it's not very popular for us to say this is mandatory. We do in energy have a 2.5-day, what we call energy fundamentals course, which essentially introduces students to the language, because it is an entirely new language. It has all its own acronyms. If you haven't had any energy experience at all in your home jurisdiction, that in itself can be quite overwhelming. So that's offered over a period of 2.5 days towards the beginning of the term. So both James, myself, and Tibi give lectures on that. We also have people coming in from some law firms, so Norton Rose Fulbright and Herbert Smith and some other, I actually had an energy trader come in from JP Morgan one year just to really enforce the idea that energy is a commodity. So none of the modules that are listed under the Energy Law Institute are mandatory at this point in time, but we really encourage people to do that energy fundamental course, because it makes the rest of the year much easier. Because even if you don't, as an example, pick a regulation module, you will have a 2.5-hour session where you're introduced to the main concepts and why energy is one of the most heavily regulated sectors in the world. So you'll understand that, so you won't have a kind of a gap in your knowledge. And lastly, Martha, your question on you'd love to attend other modules. Absolutely. And in fact, I encourage students to do that, to take maybe some modules from School of Law or Dispute Resolution, because obviously energy is an investment. And if you do investment treaty arbitration, it ties in very nicely with what we do in the Energy Law Institute. So there is an opportunity the overall credit for an LLM is 180. And there's a certain proportion that you must pick for if you want to get a specialism, but then the other modules you can actually pick from any other specialism available. So you have quite a wide choice, which is one of the reasons why we get a lot of people from commercial law, business, public international law, and environmental law on our modules. I think, Prof, I've managed to do it
Okay.
with a minute to spare.
There's just actually one, the last question, there was actually quite something important in there, which probably other people might be interested in, is if someone does the accelerated January program because of the pandemic. So we understand that some people may not be able to start in September and will want to defer and come in January. So if you do, please make sure you use the application portal to indicate you're deferring. And we have a 12-month program and we have a 9-month program. So the accelerated one is the 9-month program. So it will start in January, but this is an extremely intensive program. And Professor Noam, are you able to give a little bit more detail on the 9-month program? This is just for a minute or so, really.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to qualify what was said here in relation to your ability to work, whether or not you fall within the framework of what the home office here allows. So it's 20 hours per week. I would strongly advise against planning to work while pursuing an intensive program of that nature. I think that it's fair to say that you should focus your energy and your effort on the program, solely on the program, under such circumstances. Part of the program, indeed, is to offer also a short, which in our, usually we didn't used to offer that, but this is part of the new offering, a short third term, okay, semester. So that would be a short semester, which would commence, or is planned to commence around June. As I said before, definitely achievable, obtainable, but it just requires from you to focus your attention to the program itself. Some people would see it actually as an advantage. There are no distractions. It's not stretching over a long period of time. Some people find it. So on the one hand, would like to prefer to start in January due to personal reasons, or maybe due to COVID, waiting for certain things to be cleared, but would like to be there, that is in the job market, at the beginning of the new year. New year, what I mean is post-summer, so be there in September, October, after the program. And this is exactly why we offer this. As I said, it's the first time that we offer it, and we are finding out that there's quite a lot of interest across the board in this offering.
Thank you. I think for like the accelerated, people will be required to do modules across the whole of that period. And if you take the 12-month, then you'll be potentially have to write a dissertation. Is that correct? I think is some of the
12 months starting in January. That is,
yes.
Yes. So that means that the second, in that case, what you will do is you would still be working on your dissertation in the fall of 2021, right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I just would like to bring this session to a close. I would like to thank you all for your attendance, and especially clocking in at different time zones all over the world. And you are invited, and you will receive an invitation to a taster class from the Energy Natural Resources Law professor that will be hosting that. So please log into that to have a more full depth session. And I will just leave to our hosts, James and Norah, to say goodbye, and then and maybe give a bit more detail about their taster class, and then we'll close the session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for attending, and thank you for all the questions. I hope you found it helpful. I hope we've answered your questions, and very much look forward to seeing, well, at least some of you, perhaps all of you, at Queen Mary at some stage in the future. Norah, do you want to say, we've got a session, haven't we, next week, where we're doing this taster lecture on climate change, which is on Thursday at 11
Thursday
o'clock.
afternoon. Yeah, okay. So yes, definitely next Thursday, and details will be posted. And it's just to give a kind of, I suppose, an overview, an introduction of the style and some of the content. Obviously, it's only going to be it's scheduled for an hour, but we'll probably talk for a bit less than that. So we'll have a little Q&A, which is what we would do in class. We'd normally try and break it up into sections. So sometimes a 20-minute introduction, and then some questions, and then a further 20 minutes. So we'll probably stick with the format that we use when we're live in class, to try and keep it interactive as well as informative. So we look forward to seeing many of you then.